Welcome back. We're on part 3, dealing with the law of journalism and mass communication. We're in chapter 6 on the subject of protecting privacy, and we are up to the tort of appropriation. Appropriation is identity theft. It's using a person's name, their picture, their likeness, their voice, or their identity for the purpose of making money, for advertising or other commercial uses, without somebody's permission, so there's no consent. The defenses are news, public domain, First Amendment, incidental use, advertising for mass medium, and consent, and we'll go through those in a little bit. But first we're going to walk through the elements of appropriation. One of the elements that a plaintiff has to prove is identification. They have to show that their name, picture, likeness, voice, identity has been used, and that can be a stage name or a pseudonym. It could be a recording of somebody's voice or their video. And their likeness can be used also. So if it's a doppelganger, if it's somebody who looks or sounds like them, then that can be appropriation also. There's an exception to that, and that is if there's a disclaimer that's used, then having an imitator amounts to nothing more than flattery. The idea is that there won't be confusion if this imitator is upfront about it. When you're looking at somebody's identity, you're looking at the values and you're looking at trying to protect them with appropriation. So values protected, 1 is dignity and 2 is monetary value. Dignity in how you own your own identity, how it's used to portray who you are and what messages you want to put out. And then there's monetary value, which is the ability to use your identity to make money, the ability to control a revenue stream if your image is going to be used for profit. Appropriation as a method for protecting privacy using the courts and using tort law, it's been around for about, probably 100 some years. The textbook goes into the history on this. I think it's just good for you to know that this has been around for about 100 plus years. The assumption with appropriation is that most people want to remain private, and so this has been a way to defend that privacy. And when we're talking about appropriation, we're actually talking about 2 subcategories or 2 torts that fall within it. One is commercialization, the other one is right of publicity. I'll pull all this up on the screen. So commercialization goes towards that money value that I was talking about, the right to protect against somebody using a person's name or their likeness, a picture, voice, identity to make money for commercial or trade purposes. And then the right of publicity goes towards dignity, and that's for public figures and public officials, people who are well known. It helps them protect their rights against someone using their name, picture, likeness, voice, or identity. Again, commercial or trade purposes, that's for making money. The assumption is that people want to have control over their identity and over their story, how they're perceived and how their identity is used, the value that it has. Most people want to remain private, but I have a little asterisk there. In today's society with social media, I kind of question that, the way that people share information now and what they share and to the extent that they share it can have an effect on the level of privacy that they can come to expect. If you put all of your information out there into the public, then you should have a reduced expectation as to privacy. Some cases that the textbook focused on: the Harris-Faulkner case. She's a news anchor on Fox News, and she had a dispute regarding a toy that Hasbro put in place for their Littlest Pet Shop line. You can see side by side the 2 characters. So you've got Harris-Faulkner on the left, and then you've got this hamster on the right-hand side. An argument for resemblance probably wouldn't be there, but she brought a claim for name-based right of publicity. The claim was strong enough that Hasbro decided to settle with her and have the case dismissed. Identity does not have to be visual, it can be based in name. The text also references the Vanna White case. The company Samsung had a television commercial where they use a robot on a game show that looked sufficiently like Vanna White that she decided that they had appropriated her identity, and she brought suit. And it went up on appeal, and the court agreed. The advertising agency that put the ad together didn't use her name, didn't use her picture, didn't use her likeness or voice, but this robot had enough things in common with her that people would identify that image with Vanna White. And the textbook also references the Cheers case. Cheers was a TV show back in the 80s, and it was a big deal back then. At the time, there were a number of bars or pubs that had opened using the Cheers name, and as one of their promotionals, they wanted to use two animatronic characters named Hank and Bob to sit in the bar and give it that Cheers look or Cheers feel. The bars got permission from Paramount, which owned the copyright on Cheers, to put these robots in place, but they didn't get permission from the two TV stars who played the roles on television, and so a lawsuit for appropriation was filed. The original characters were named Cliff and Norm, and the robots were named Hank and Bob. The faces were different, but their clothing, their size, and their positions at the bar were similar enough that an argument could be made that this was appropriation. This case settled. The idea that you should take from these three cases is that this appropriation doesn't have to be a spot-on copy of all the different elements. It has to be enough where the public would be able to identify this person. Oh yeah, this was scary. I came across this. So this wasn't included with the text. This is a robot that someone is making in Japan, and it looks suspiciously like Scarlett Johansson, which is really kind of creepy. I believe that she's filing suit against the maker of this robot for appropriation in order to stop the sale and distribution of it. And she'll probably prevail because it uses her likeness. That being said, all these different lawsuits, even if someone's able to present a solid case for appropriation, there are defenses that can be used. Appropriation defenses are newsworthiness, First Amendment, and public domain. So newsworthiness is usually the most common defense. You can use somebody's likeness for profit. That's still acceptable if it's newsworthy. So there's value in sharing the information with the public. It has to be more than just for profit. It has to be used to report the news, and then courts can recognize the defense. First Amendment, freedom of speech, that is another defense that's used, and you've got two tests. One's the artistic relevance test, the other is the transformativeness test. The example that they gave for the artistic relevance test was a movie, Fred and Ginger, and the artist actually got sued by Ginger Rogers. The defense looks at the value of the artistic work and how the use of that identity or likeness is tied into or related to the message. If there's value that's there, then the First Amendment defense can work. Transformativeness test goes towards original work, and if enough new elements have been added to the image, then it's considered transformative and it has value of its own. Public domain, and that goes towards information that's factual. So names and associated information like names and addresses or age and height and pieces like that. If it's widely available to the public, then that can also be defense, and then that's protected. Ads for the mass medium. We'll get all these up here too. Consent and incidental use. Ads for the mass medium is where advertising uses the content of current and previous issues or episodes for magazines or TV or podcasts or whatever the medium is. And it's to demonstrate what that publisher is able to do. It's to demonstrate the value, and as long as it's not portrayed as an endorsement And as long as the sales are not linked directly to that celebrity, then use of that celebrity's identity or image within that demonstration is acceptable. Consent is another defense, and again, it's getting permission. It's a license. And as long as the image is used within the scope of the consent that was granted, then it's fine. And then there's incidental use as a defense, where someone's identity or name has not been used in a meaningful way in order to make a profit. If someone's image is included in a group photograph, that would be an example, or perhaps the passing use of somebody's name in a piece of work. That's the basics of appropriation and the defenses to appropriation. So we're going to move into intrusion in the next video.